Good evening, it's 7:40 p.m. at the capital city of Ulaanbaatar. Today is very nice Saturday and we have very nice lady in our studio. She's a founder and executive director at Global Foundation for Children with Hearing Loss. She is one of the important members who are implementing the project Save Silent World in Mongolia with the initiation of Peace Avenue Rotary Club. Miss Paige Stringer. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for receiving our invitation and thank you for the project. So let's start talking about the project Save Silent World.
So in 2014, as the executive director of the Global Foundation for Children with Hearing Loss, we learned about this initiative that Rotary here in Rotary Club at Peace Avenue here in Ulaanbaatar was looking to help the medical community here establish hearing screening for babies and young children who with.
So it was initiated in 2014.
So it was conceptualized in 2014.
Right.
And then I had a chance to talk with the Rotarians and share with them the work that we have done in other countries. And we were able to collaborate together to come up with a plan for how we would incorporate the screening and then the appropriate follow-up support so that the babies who are screened would be able to have the services that they need to be successful. And over the course of the next year and a half, we worked together to raise funding, and we launched the project in September of 2016.
2016, last year in September.
Yes.
So it's been a year now. So what's the project aim in Mongolia?
So the aim is to identify babies as young as possible, ideally at birth, right after birth.
At birth. Right.
24 hours after birth, that every baby in Mongolia will have a hearing screening test. And this is important because language development and child development happens in the first years of life. And we know from research that the longer we wait to address a hearing problem, the less time there is to address it. The brain stops focusing on areas related to hearing after about 6 years of age. So
let me make sure. So after 6 years, if it's not identified, the brain's gonna stop working on your hearings and the life's gonna be, well, deaf.
So it's more that the capacity to understand and develop spoken language ends at about age 6. If we can identify hearing loss at birth, that means that there's more time to address the problem. So for example, you were born with normal hearing, and you came into the world hearing sounds around you. And over time, your ability to hear turned into your ability to listen and then to speak. But for children who are born with hearing loss, if they're not identified and provided with support, they're not able to develop like a normally developing child until they get the services they need. And their time window is about 6 years. So if a child is identified at age 3, that's 3 years of delay that we have to catch up and accelerate. And so that's why if we can identify these babies at birth, then we have more time to address the problem and they can go on to develop like a normally hearing peer.
Right. So about the project, when we start talking about the project, there's always financial problems are concerned. So who are supporting this project and what organizations are cooperating?
So so the Global Foundation for Children with Hearing Loss has done some work around grants to get some support. So we have some long-term supporters in Hear the World Foundation and the Otakon Foundation that have contributed to this project. And then of course our relationship with the Rotaries. So the Rotary Club here, Rotary Club at Peace Avenue, contributed funds, but also technical support as well. They've really been a huge partner in advocating for this project in addition to the financial piece. And I myself am a Rotarian, and our club in Seattle, there's a Rotary Club of Seattle 4 that is also contributed some significant funds.
Oh, right.
And other Rotary clubs within the United States have contributed. So between all of these partners, we've been able to get enough funding to initiate and carry on this project for a period of time.
So what's the impact of the project in Mongolia?
So
if you mention some numbers and facts.
Sure. So last year, in September of 2016, we gave hearing screening devices to all the maternal hospitals in the Children's Hospital and the First Central Hospital here in Mongolia. So every hospital that works with a baby has the ability to screen. And once we get this project firmly up and running, 200 children or babies will be identified with hearing loss every year. And that's really important because that's 200 babies that we're able to help now at birth, as opposed to when they're 3, 4, 5, or much later, when they're not developing their language as people would expect them to.
Well, this screening is very essential for the rest of the baby's life, right?
Yes.
If it's identified, it can be cured or it can be treated.
That's correct. So that's correct. So the earlier we identify, the sooner. So there's some guidelines that have been established. It's called the 136 guidelines.
136,
and,
okay.
In a perfect world, every baby in the world would have a hearing screen by the time they're 1 month old. Ideally sooner than that, but by 1 month of old. By 3 months of old, they will have been diagnosed with a hearing loss. And by 6 months of age, they would have been enrolled in an early intervention program and provided with the hearing technology and the support that they need so that they can not only develop spoken language, but also develop other areas of cognition and child development that their normal hearing peers are going through at that time.
Right. So you guys are collaborating to implement this project. What are the struggles here?
The parents want the best for their children, and it would be great if they would have the information, the knowledge that hearing screening is important to do. And so if they could be sure to ask their doctors that for a hearing screening test for their babies, so that when their babies are born, that they can get that hearing test. It's currently available in every maternal hospital here in the capital. We have trained the professionals how to do the test.
And there's also training involved.
Yes, we also do training, not just for the hearing screening piece. And then we've also been doing training around the follow-up. So there's the audiology and the therapy services that are equally as important. You can do all the screening you want, but if there's not the appropriate support to follow up on the results, then it's meaningless.
Yeah, meaningless.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in the same way, you can have all the professional support, but if the children are not identified early, it makes their job much more difficult.
Right.
So what we're trying to develop here in Mongolia is a comprehensive program so that every baby is identified early and then has the professional expertise here in Mongolia and the appropriate hearing technology to be able to hear.
So are parents requiring to have their babies screened?
So right now it's not a requirement. So that's why it would be...
It has to be a requirement though.
Yes, well, there is a mandate by the Ministry of Health to make newborn hearing screening a national program by 2020.
2020, okay.
So this particular project is helping the Ministry of Health achieve that goal. So while we're working with the Ministry of Health to develop the framework and the infrastructure to do this work, we also need, we would also like to make sure that parents are aware that it is important to have a hearing screening so that they can encourage their hospitals to provide that specific test for their babies.
So spread the information and let people know.
Yes.
For example, for my son, I didn't have that kind of knowledge, and I never thought about having my son to be screened for his hearing abilities.
Yes.
And when I heard about this project, I thought, well, what if? I never had this thought until I heard about it. And I have this question, what if? Because I didn't have him checked.
Right. And you're not alone. There's many parents like you. And I think most parents don't realize that over 90% of babies born with hearing loss are born to parents with normal hearing. So there's no evidence of hearing loss in the family. And so that many parents just aren't even aware that it could be a potential issue. So it's really important to talk to your doctor and ask them about this particular test. It doesn't take very long to do, very easy test to do, and so important because it can really affect the future of your child if that child is not identified at birth.
Right. Well, let's talk about your involvement and how you found this Global Foundation for Children with Hearing Loss.
So the organization was established in 2009. I myself was born with a severe to profound hearing loss. And if I'm not wearing my hearing technology, I can sleep very, very well at night, no matter where in the world I am, because I'm completely deaf. And, but fortunately, I was identified relatively early for my generation. And I was also provided with hearing aids and with appropriate professional support so that I could learn to listen and speak. And so I went to mainstream kindergarten by the time, entered kindergarten. And I attended normal hearing programs throughout my whole academic career. So I have a master's degree and have had a business career. And then I was reflecting on how grateful I am for that support that I had early in my life. I actually was spending some time in Vietnam back in 2008.
2008.
And I spent some time at a school for the deaf there. And the children in this particular school were all older than 5 because they didn't have early intervention services yet. And they all were deaf and hard of hearing. So I showed up at this school, and the director there was looking to establish early intervention services, and she was having a little bit of a difficulty doing that because of the age of the children and so forth. And so when she met me and she realized that somebody with my degree of hearing loss could in fact listen and talk, she was interested to know more about my story. And some of the people in Vietnam didn't think that I really had a hearing loss, or maybe was trying to, I don't know, fake it or something. So they asked me to have a hearing test. And so I said, sure. So we went to the sound booth. They did a hearing test. And it was interesting because when we came out, my piece of paper, my audiogram, was right in the middle of the range of the children at the school. But the difference was I was identified much earlier than they were. And the outcome was tremendously different. So they became very interested in, wow, what can we do to change this story?
How is this possible? Right.
So, so I went home and we worked together to create this project, this idea of how we're going to help the Vietnamese develop services for babies and children under 6 who have hearing loss. But I learned that there really was no organization out there that had that type of focus and that type of plan or vision that we had in terms of helping other countries establish those types of services. So that's when I decided shortly after that, well, there's a lot of need for this in the world. And so we established the Global Foundation for Children with Hearing Loss. And we have a team of about 75 professionals, mostly from the United States, from other countries too, who are expert in audiology, ENT work, in therapy and education. And we all work together in these different countries where we work to help the people in the country develop services to support their children. So that's what we do.
So how many countries are you working besides Mongolia?
So right now we continue in Vietnam, so we continue there, and we're also in Ecuador as well.
Ecuador.
So the 3 countries now.
And expanding.
Yeah, expanding. Yes,
you have to expand. You are doing the good deed here.
Thank you.
And I feel very appreciated. Well, no, not appreciated. I'm putting the. I really appreciate what you're doing in Mongolia.
Oh, it's been great, and the partnership we've had with the local Rotary Club, with the medical community, with the Children's Hospital, First Central Hospital, and the 3 maternal hospitals. It's been a huge momentum of people trying to do good things for their babies and children. So it's fun to be a part of it.
Right, right. And all we need to do now is raise awareness to the parents, right?
That's right.
So I want to leave the last minutes to you. If there's anything I didn't ask, or if there's any comment you would, or anything to say to our audience, it's your time now.
Well, I think I would just underscore the fact that it's really important to have that hearing test as early as possible, ideally at birth, within the 24 hours after the birth. And then if your child does have a hearing loss, there's lots of good services and solutions that are out there. People here in Mongolia, the medical professionals know about those services. So so please have that hearing test done, and for your children, so that they can grow up to become anything that they want to be in the world. And we want to get that test in there as soon as possible.
And also, there are so many treatments, even if their children are identified later, right?
That's correct.
So let's not lose hope.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much again, and I wish you health and good luck in your future works.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all for today. Thank you very much for being with us. We will see you on next Tuesday with more news and updates. Have a good day. Bye-bye. In Mongolia.